This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Zero Procure, who are here to make procurement simple. Zero Procure harnesses a network of specialists to ensure that businesses are working with the right suppliers at the right price. Hospitality Meets is delighted to partner with the Zero Procure team and their network to help keep this podcast accessible and free to listen to. Please get in touch with them for a chat. Just click on their link in the show notes or visit their site at zeroprocure.com/podcast. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Mark Lewis, CEO of charity superstars Hospitality Action. Coming up on today's show, Mark describes how he likes to spend his Wednesday nights in.
It's food flying and there's drinks flowing and drinks spilling and nobody comes away without some red wine down their front.
Phil suggests a great way to lose weight. Invisible chips springs to mind. And Mark demonstrates that even hotel legends know when to find the fun.
One of the abiding images was Jeremy Goring frisbeeing the main course across the table. And
all that and so much more as Mark chats us through his story and journey to date. There can't be many of you out there that have not heard of Hospitality Action. I think we can all agree that the work they do in acting as a critical safety net for our industry can never be underplayed. Mark's story within that is possibly a little unexpected, but no less enthralling as he showcases yet another route and role that this industry can take you into. A huge thank you to him for sharing his story. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe wherever you consume your podcast. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to, I can't actually quite believe that we've done this, Mark, but it's Mark Lewis from Hospitality Action. How are you?
Phil, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, good to talk to you. Sorry, it's taken us 9 months to get this in the diary, but we've both been busy, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's here and there and everywhere, and especially, I'm sure we'll come on to this in terms of the important work that you guys do, but I can assume that you've had a bit of a year of it.
Yeah, we've had a bit of a 3 years of it. It's been a crazy time for the sector and therefore a crazy time for us. So we've been working hard, and I can talk a lot about what we do and why we're working hard and how we help people. But yeah, it's kept us busy for the last 3 years, and last year was off the scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the uninitiated, just tell the world who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. So my name is Mark Lewis. I'm the Chief Executive of Hospitality Action, which is the benevolent charity for UK hospitality. So we're really here to help people who work or have worked in the sector and hit a bump in the road, and we hope to get them back on the road and get them back working and happy and healthy once again.
Brilliant. And you've been in that role now for how long?
It's 5 years. So I joined in December 2017. I overlapped for a month with my predecessor, Penny Moore, my great friend Penny, and then I took over fully when she left at the beginning of 2018. So 5 years and counting. I can't believe it's gone so quickly, but I guess we've all rather lost the last 3 years, haven't we?
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it's 3 years, actually. We are pretty much at the 3 year point where all that stuff kicked off when somebody ate a bat that they shouldn't have eaten or whatever happened. But in any case, we absolutely don't need to go there. Although I'm sure that there's probably some elements around the work that you did in that time that's probably relevant to the story that we'll talk about today. But in any case, before we get into all of that, I'd love to go right back to kind of the beginning of you, really. And how have you ended up here?
It's a really good question. And if you'd asked me 25 years ago if I thought I would end up running a trade charity, I never would have believed you. But my background is writing. Studied English literature at university down in Bristol. Wasn't quite sure what to do with myself after that. Got a job teaching English in Singapore, and while I was there, I started writing for the Straits Times, which is their number one broadsheet. Used to write book reviews and concert reviews and previews for the Straits Times, and loved writing, and just began to think that maybe I could make a living from writing. So pushed ahead with that, came back to the UK after some traveling in Southeast Asia, and got a job with a company called the Rough Guides, who are a travel guidebook company.
Yep.
So that kept me busy for 10 years. Got the gig to co-write the Rough Guide to Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. That took about 24 months. And then having done that, wrote a bigger guide on Singapore.
A less rough guide.
Yeah, exactly. There's not much roughing it in Singapore these days, but there's still a few crash pads that we were able to tell people about. But yeah, so did that, then took on the Rough Guide to Vietnam, which I co-wrote with somebody called Jan Dodd, and stayed involved with the Rough Guides as a freelance writer for a decade. So was bouncing to and from Southeast Asia and and London, and doing some writing for the Mail on Sunday and the Independent at the same time, mostly travel work. So yeah, that kept me busy through my 20s. But it was a strange sort of rootless existence. Didn't earn much at all because the understanding was that you were lucky to be traveling and earning a
Right.
little bit at the same time. So
A labour of love.
yeah, well, exactly that. Yeah, so I was earning a crust, but nothing much more than that. And all my friends were settling down and getting married and having children and taking on mortgages and all that adult stuff. So I came to the conclusion that I got to a crossroads. I was offered the chance to write The Rough Guide to Chile or The Rough Guide to Switzerland. Both would have been fabulous, but decided to settle down and stay back in the UK instead. So I got a job as a features editor on a magazine called Computer Weekly, another trade magazine that used to be in the same publishing stable as the Caterer magazine, which you'll know from the hospitality sector. So
Yeah.
sort of cut my teeth at Computer Weekly. Never quite understood much about computers, but managed to blag my way through 3 or 4 years there, and then moved across to the Caterer magazine probably in 2003, and then that's when my involvement in the hospitality sector began. So I was deputy editor at the Caterer for a few years. Then I took over as editor when my predecessor moved on, and then ended as publisher at the Caterer in 2017 when I moved across to HA. And then I guess the final step is all about me being a trustee of HA for 10 years while I was at the Caterer. HA is 185 years old. The Caterer magazine is about
Jeez.
140 years old. So we've sort of grown up together, and there's always been a strong link between the two brands. So I was blessed to be a trustee for 10 years while at the Caterer. And then, as I said, I got the chance to move across. So here I am today.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, was the transition into the Caterer kind of a happy accident, therefore, or because you happened to be under the same stable, or was it actually a meaningful? This is you maybe the travel element gave you a little bit of a bug for hospitality because you can't really do travel without a bit of hospitality, can you?
No, exactly that. I think there's a real connection. So, I hope that stood me in good stead when I had my interview. Yeah, we were in the same stable, Reed Business Information, part of Reed Elsevier, and I was joking apart. I managed to survive 4 years at Computer Weekly, but I'm a bit of a luddite, so I always felt I was a moment away from some awful gaff, and but my lack of understanding of technology would suddenly be found out. So I was always keen to move out from technology into something that suited me more. Always thought the Caterer might be that route, so the opportunity came up. And as you say, there's a connection, obvious connection between hospitality and travel, and the work you do as a rough guide author is in large part about finding great places to stay at a price point, great places to eat, great places to drink and hang out. So I had a sort of sense of what good hospitality looked like. So hopefully that stood me in good stead, and that allowed me to make that jump across.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe at the time you probably don't give yourself enough credit for the experience that must have given you in order to then take on a role at the Caterer as an example. But I find it really interesting as well that you went from travel into computing, which are, from the outside looking in, are two completely different things. I mean, travel is quite I don't even really know what's almost a hedonistic style of writing, I suppose. And
Yeah, I mean, I was paid tuppence halfpenny, so it never felt very hedonistic. I was always
yeah,
sort of, working on a shoestring and in the cheapest crash pad I could find, and backpack on my back. But the two big things I learned from working at the Rough Guys were first self-sufficiency. That it really focuses the mind. If you're dropped in a huge country and you have to cover the whole country, you need to get under its skin and understand how it ticks, not just where the good hotels and restaurants are, but what's it all about? What does it feel like to be in Malaysia or Vietnam? And so that was a big learning for me. I remember turning up so I covered, so I wrote a book on Malaysia, but there's Peninsular Malaysia, which runs from Singapore up to Thailand. But then there are two eastern Malaysian states, Sabah and Sarawak, at the top of Borneo. And Borneo is a sort of byword for, a million miles away, jungle, forest,
right, yeah,
scary adventures. So I remember waking up one morning, my first morning in Borneo, thinking, wow, I've got to cover a huge swathe of Borneo to write a book and become an expert. And that was quite a rude awakening when I woke up with jet lag on that first morning. But do you know what? You get down the bus station, you crack on, and before you know it, you've got under the skin of a place, and you start traveling around and you ask people and you seek advice and speak to fellow travelers, and before you know it, you've got a sense of what makes the place tick. So
Yeah.
that was a great learning, and I've always borne that in mind, that was an achievement, I think, if I look back. And then secondly, I think also travel is just good for the soul. It's good for everybody. So
Especially at the age you would have been at that time as well.
yeah, I was in my early 20s, not long out of university, done a bit of teaching in Singapore. But yeah, I think, I'd recommend everybody to spend some time out of their comfort zone and to be in a minority. I think it's really good for the soul for people to know what it's like to be in a minority. I remember when I was first going to Vietnam, a lot of people I would come across in villages had never seen a white person, and that was a fascinating dynamic. But
Yeah.
yeah, for me that was a valuable life learning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, though. I mean, I'd say it to anyone that cares to listen, that when you're starting out in your career, kind of any stage really, is go see the world, especially from a hospitality perspective. I think it can give you so many insights into ways and means of doing things, and the cultural differences amongst individuals, but then how that relates to how you deliver hospitality and all of these things that are interlinked together. I think when you have a kind of a greater knowledge of the world, I think it calms you down in terms
It does,
of
yeah. It gives you a great
how you see
perspective.
things. Yeah,
Absolutely, and also it's so reassuring to go across the world and find kindness, find human kindness. I had a motorbike accident in the highlands of central Vietnam, and a chap took me under his wing and just looked after me for a week. And he had nothing, he had no money, but I remember him saying to me, I was in hospital and I'd dislocated my shoulder badly and I had a crack on my head, and I'd been patched up, and he said he didn't have much English, but he said, because your father's not here, he said, I will be your father in Vietnam. And
right.
it was a lovely moment in life. And I thought, wow, how kind is somebody who's got nothing compared to us in the West to just say, I'll take care of you now, and you'll be all right. So I think it's lovely to travel half a world away and then see that sort of kindness.
Yeah, and equally, I mean, your comment earlier on about Borneo and its reputation as being a dangerous place may be justified in some places, but like most places, I think when you travel and you go off the beaten track to things, you're reminded that the vast majority, and when I say vast majority, I'm probably talking about 95% plus of people are warm, lovely, friendly human beings, and it's just that tiny percentage that's left that kind of steal the headlines and and paint a picture that's not necessarily a truthful one.
Yeah, exactly. Amen to that. Yeah, completely. I think it's a big old world, but it's getting smaller and smaller because travel is so easy and relatively cheap now. And so, yeah, how lovely to travel the world and find that there's people like you that may be in a very remote place like Borneo or Vietnam, but yeah, they're just normal people like you. They want a nice life. They want to have a security for their family, and they want to be good and kind when they can be.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So let's focus a little bit on caterer, your time at the caterer, because obviously that's probably informed how you've become more and more involved as you've gone on in terms of the hospitality industry and now what you do. You started as deputy editor. What does it take to run the preeminent press of an industry?
Well, I think very good luck to start with. I had a fantastic team. Amanda, my deputy editor, was brilliant and is brilliant and remains a really dear friend. So there were great people around me. Janet Harmer, who knew everything there is to know about hotels. So it was a fantastic team. And I think what the caterer has achieved over the years, it's almost become it's a supplier to the industry. It provides a service to the industry in terms of information and best practice. But it's really got connected with the industry over the decades. So we were very blessed, I think. And so, people would come to us and they would tell their story through us, and we had a brilliant team. So that was all in place. So yeah, I think I was very lucky. It was just about continuing the job that people had done before me. But trade publishing is all about helping people build better careers and better businesses. And so, it was just about making sure that we were in touch with the people doing clever things and cutting edge things, exciting things, coming up with new ideas. And that was what we needed to present to the market so people could learn. I was talking to somebody at the GM conference dinner at the Grosvenor House on Monday evening. It's very easy for different parts of the hospitality sector to become siloed. So hoteliers speak to hoteliers and they know exactly what other hotels do. And casual dining operators will speak to people like them and they know what the market looks like. But actually, you've got to look over into other parts of the sector and learn from other parts of the sector. So I guess that's what Caterer was about, really. It was about finding great things that people were doing, clever things, good ideas, and just passing them on so that people could apply them to their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, you've got, it's if you work in the hospitality industry, you've heard of Caterer. I mean, I think that's probably stands to reason. Were you there at a time where there was a kind of a mix of print and online? Were you there across a transition period or anything like that?
Yeah, I was there, I guess, at a transition period. So when I joined in the early noughties, there was a website called caterer.com, which subsequently became the jobs board caterer.com. And we were still getting to grips with that relationship between web and print. And nobody quite knew how that was going to work. And it seems so obvious now that the world was going to go towards digital.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was trying to find that. It was all about trying to find that balance between print and digital media. And we had two different teams. And at times, looking back, we probably had two people writing the same story at the same time. One person writing the same story to go online, the other person writing it for that week's issue. So it was a funny old time, yeah. But I think for all people in media, it's been challenging, and there's no doubt, there's no question that print media is consumed by fewer people globally than it used to be, because guess what? We all find our news on social media or through digital channels. And I think it's about coming to terms with that and accepting that as long as you're providing great content in the way in the medium and in the place where somebody wants to consume it, then you're doing your job. So some people still want to buy a magazine, some people want to buy a newspaper in the morning, but other people want to go to the BBC or the Guardian website, or they'll get all of their news from Twitter. So as long as you're telling your stories in those places and through those media, then you're doing your job well. And you mustn't beat yourself up that the world is changing, because you can't change progress.
No, ain't that the truth? Yeah, I mean and I'm watching a thing on Netflix at the moment called The $1 Billion Code, and it's around the effectively Google Earth and how that came about. And there's a bit of I still haven't finished watching it yet, but it's a story around basically somebody came up with an idea, and everybody at the time went, "That'll never take off." And much the same, I suppose, with the transition over into the internet world at the time, is that there was a group of people that went, "This is going to change the world," and a vast majority of people at the time went, "Well, that'll never happen," because it's change, right? And people tend to, if you're kind of rigidly looking at how you'd go about your business, anything that comes into that space can feel like a little bit of a, well, that's overwhelming, so that will never take off, and it's almost like an excuse to kick it down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I think largely people don't like change, do they? So they will push against it rather than accept it willingly. And I think that was an absolutely seismic change, the growth of digital media to the media world. But listen, I mean, the Caterer does a brilliant job now under James Stagg, and other magazines and websites or media brands do a brilliant job of presenting their information across media. And it's all about the brand rather than about a website or a social media profile or a print product. It's about a brand that you trust. And I was very proud to work at the Caterer because I think it built trust over many decades, and it was helped by the fact that very, very clever people 40 years ago had ideas like the Cateys and the Acorn Awards and the Hotelier of the Year Award. And so I think, again, those sorts of programs really embedded it within the sector it serves.
Yeah, glad you brought up the Cateys. Features in your very kindly the form that you filled out. I always ask a question of everyone, and kind of as we've sort of got there, what's one of the funniest things that's ever happened to you? And you very kindly mentioned something to do with microphone issues at the Cateys. So there's a story here. Please go.
I had a terribly embarrassing year once, probably about maybe my third Catey, and it's quite daunting. The first time you do the Catey Awards or anything like them, you've got 1,200 people in the great room at the Grosvenor House, and
Yeah.
in my first year, you feel very aware that people are seeing you for the first time. They don't know you from Adam. You've suddenly rocked up, and people turn up at the Cateys, and there'll be hundreds of people they know and like there. So it's a great chance to catch up. And then there's some chap on stage you'd never heard of who's telling you he's running the Caterer now. So it was always a very daunting event to do at the outset. But, I came to love doing it and always enjoyed it. But I remember about 3 years in, somebody in their great wisdom decided that rather than have the stage at the side of the great room, as is normally the way, we would have a circular stage in the centre. And
Right.
so I was dispatched from the wings with a little sort of Madonna mic hung off my ear and curving round to my mouth.
You got to go wandering.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I was sent off into this circular stage. So I was surrounded by 1,200 people, talking to them in the round. Started to give my introduction, my welcome to the Cateys, and then realised that my microphone was faulty. So I don't know if you remember Norman Collier,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Northern stand-up comic, who his gag was that he would speak through a microphone that seemed to be cutting out every other syllable.
Yeah.
So I basically did a Norman Collier. So I was spinning like a ballerina on a music box in the middle of the great room with 1,200 people's faces spinning past me as I turned with a microphone that wasn't working. So that was a bit of a painful moment. And at first I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I thought the microphone wasn't working, but I couldn't be sure. But then I became aware that people were smiling and then laughing, and that told me that something wasn't quite right. So it was rather painful. And then chap called David Collins, I think was his name, who used to be the Toastmaster who used to run the Cateys for us. He came up and reached out and said, "So I think you'll be needing this," and gave me a handheld mic, and then everything was okay. But I still see people to this day. He'll come up and laugh and say, "Do you know what? That was hilarious when you had the microphone problem at the Cateys." So yeah, there we go. That was
Yeah.
my most embarrassing moment, shared with 1,200 of the great and the good of the sector.
Yeah, well, and at the time you probably had this sort of welling up inside of, my God, right? This is exactly all you need. You've got sponsors there, no doubt, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's, the pressure is there to pull off a legendary event. But as you quite rightly said there, the great thing about when stuff like that happens is that when you look back on it, you can often look back with a smile. But more importantly, I think, is that the people who were there look back on it with a smile, and remember it fondly.
They probably enjoyed it far more than any other of my introductory speeches. To go through the motions of saying all the right things, and rightly so. But it's not joke a minute, so they probably enjoyed it more than they did any other Katie introductory speech.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, Cateys is a major part of what the Caterer stands for. Is all about shining a light on the good stuff that happens across any given year in the industry. That was something that was already in play when you took over the reins, and you just kind of carried it on.
Yeah, that had been going for many years before I joined. It was probably, oh gosh, maybe 15 years old before I turned up. I think in 2012, from memory, we hosted the Silver Cateys, which was the 25th Cateys, and that was an amazing year. I really enjoyed that event. I remember my dear friend Arnold Fuel, who passed away a few years ago, won the special award from memory, and I'm sure that was the year that we gave a Silver Catey to. Yes, it was. We had a Silver Catey for the winner of winners, and it was a public vote for the Cateys winners from the first 25 years who sort of stood out more than any
Right.
others.
Yeah.
That was won by Michelle and Albert Roux, who came on stage together and
Oh, that's
accepted the
fair
award.
enough.
So that was a special moment.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that, as you would expect, they were involved in HA. They were both patrons of Hospitality Action, and we were really proud to have them. And obviously, we lost them both in the last few years, which was terribly sad.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the things that I've loved, and especially having now run this humble little show for the last nearly 3 years as well, is that one of the objectives for me with the show was to to try and utilize the profiles of other people to elevate the profile of the industry, and when you get somebody on that's kind of you always looked at as your one of your heroes and things like that, and I'm not somebody that generally gets starstruck, but there is a moment where you go, wow. And then you remember, and I heard somebody talking about this just the other day. You get a scenario whereby you put these people up on a pedestal, and then you remember ultimately that these are human beings and they're just doing their best. Their best might seem way better than some others, but they're still just operating to the set of personal desires and things like that we all have. And there's a lot of humility amongst these wonderful, wonderful humans that exist at kind of the top end of this industry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been blown away ever since I joined the Caterer back in 2003 or four, whenever it was, at the humanity and the humility of so many people around the sector, and the willingness to give back. We all know that it's often spoken of that the sector is it's sometimes painted as the last resort by careers influencers. But I think once you're in, that's that certainly isn't the case. It's a wonderful sector. It's a sector where you can build dazzling careers. You can have wonderful times and have a really fulfilling life. But I think there's so much will to give back by people in the sector, and I'm always blown away by that. I remember, you talk about being starstruck. I remember very soon after I joined the Caterer, I went to an event at Westminster Kingsway College, and I met Brian Turner. And I when I used to write rough guides, I'd be away for 6 months in Asia and then back for 6 months, and I would sit at home with the telly on in the background for a bit of company while I wrote my notes up. And I remember, in the afternoon, you'd have all the chefing programs, Can't Cook, Won't Cook,
Yeah.
that sort of thing that would come on. And I knew Brian off the telly, and then I met him, and I thought how exciting and what a wonderful man he was. But then I learned over the years that Brian Turner, like many other people in hospitality, is focused enormously upon the sector that he loves and upon bringing people through and helping guide people through careers. An absolutely wonderful man. I've always said I think there must be 3 or 4 or 5 Brian Turners out there, because he's been ubiquitous for as long as I've been around the sector, and always turning up at events and supporting events and initiatives, and helping with apprenticeships and future chef competitions and so on. A wonderful man, and there's lots of people like him who give back, and I think that's one of the things I love about the sector, is people's willingness to give back and throw themselves into supporting other people around it.
Yeah, totally. It's what you said earlier on, actually, around kind of what Caterer stood for in terms of almost bringing the industry together, the various different subsectors that exist within the sector, is that we can all learn from each other, and we can all help each other become better, and we can all shine a light on each other, and we can all basically just do positive things for each other. And I've never seen an industry like it. I've been lucky or unlucky, depending on which way you look at it, to work for a recruitment company outside of hospitality, and God, I hated every second of it, because this industry is just so alive. And always, there's always challenges to face, where we have more than our fair share at the moment, but everybody's willing to to take them on. It's like we don't run away from the challenges. We don't necessarily run towards them, but we'll definitely embrace them, because that's actually how we learn and grow as humans.
Yeah, do you know what? You're right. It's such a resilient sector, and people help each other. Of course, there's healthy competition. That's how the country works. That's how business works. Everybody has to turn a profit and do their best, but people look out for one another. I remember speaking to Amanda Hyman when they had the fire at the Mandarin Oriental a few years ago,
Yeah.
saying, other hotels got in touch to say, how can we help? Because you must have guests who've been vacated and evacuated. Can we get there were guests, I think, stood in Hyde Park, and another hotel said, "Can we get bottles of water over to them while they're there and disconcerted?" There's so many examples of people looking out for one another,
Yeah.
which always fills my heart, rather.
Yeah, absolutely. The word I've heard used is co-opetition.
Oh, I like
That's
that. Yeah. Oh, I'm
yeah,
going to use that.
yeah. Well, I nicked it from somebody else as well. So
Right. Fair enough.
yeah, totally. No, great. Well, let's talk about hospitality action, because you have been at the helm now for a while. You've certainly, I can imagine, you've had your own challenges in that time because of certain things that have happened in the world, as we've already discussed. But yeah, talk to us about your journey with hospitality action from kind of when you took over till now. What's happened?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying Hospitality Action is a charity I'm so proud of, and I'm on a mission. I've been on a mission since day one to tell more people around the sector what it is and what it does. And I've said this many times, and my team tires of me saying it, but Sally Beck at the Royal Lancaster Hotel was somebody I knew well from my Caterer days. But I went to have a coffee with her, I think in February of 2018, when I just taken this job on, and I said, what does HA mean to you? And how would you describe it? And she said, I think she said, when you know what HA is and what it does, you fall in love with it. And that's been my sort of guiding thought ever since. It was a brilliantly put way of describing what our challenge is. We've got no agenda. We're not politicized. We're not lobbyists. We all would do. We're just here to help people who hit a bump in the road, whether that's physical or mental ill health, whether it's a financial problem or a familial problem, relationship problem. That's all we do. We wake up every morning, and my fabulous team does good things. We help people who are in difficulty, and I just want the whole sector to know that, because when you know who we are and what we do, you fall in love with us, and that's when the magic happens. That's when you send your colleague to us who needs some support, and that's when you decide to run the marathon or the 10K run that you're signed up to for us rather than another charity. So really what we're about is banging the drum and telling people who we are and what we do. And do you know what, in lockdown, although it's been a tremendously difficult 3 years through the pandemic, and through all that happened last year, we actually raised the profile of the charity materially, substantially. I've got a fantastic patron who many listeners will know, Andrew Guy, a real legend in the casual dining sector, who contacted me probably in late March of 2020 and said, you've got to look for the opportunity in a crisis. And he was absolutely right. So we've done our very best to raise as much money in order to disperse as many grants as possible to people who struggled as a result of the pandemic and what's happened subsequently. But also we took the opportunity to shout about what we do and to tub thump and to raise our profile, and that's happened. So many more people now know who we are and what we do, and that's been a great benefit to us.
Yeah, and congratulations for getting the word tub thumping. I think you might be the first person to have ever done that on this show. So you don't get a prize or anything, but well done in any case. Pat on the back. No, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think it would have been, I think for everybody in that time, it was such an unknown period as to what happens next. But to see the opportunity and be able to, I suppose, still keep it at the front and center of people's minds at a time when they had a lot on their plate, I think must have taken some real gumption and real kind of, I suppose that then it's about having a team that are fully engaged with your cause, right, as well, and getting them to, I don't know, do whatever it is that they do.
Yeah, the team were fabulous. We seconded a lot of the fundraising team to grant giving because we weren't running fundraising events. So yeah, they were absolute stars. They stepped up to the breach, and it's important that when you're a grant giving organisation that you have checks and measures, and that there's due diligence shown to making sure you get the money to the right people, the people who need it most, and people who fit your parameters. But in those early weeks during the first lockdown, we had a light touch application form for people just to get hold of a £250 grant just to keep them going while they were starting to make sense of what happened next. That there were a lot of people who were very lucky to, very relieved to see the furlough scheme kick in, and that helped the sector tremendously. But there were a lot of people who fell between the gaps in that scheme. People who were perhaps on 0 hours contracts, or people who were between jobs and didn't have an employer to put them on furlough in the first place. So we were getting as many grants out as we could to those people, and the team just stepped up brilliantly. So yeah, I was so proud of what they did. It was interesting though. What we discerned early on in the first lockdown was that people felt very disconcerted by being untethered from their working environment. We know that people who work in hospitality throw themselves into their jobs, and Tom Kerridge, who's a patron of ours and a fabulous supporter, he talks about his band of pirates. There's this sense of togetherness and camaraderie amongst people who work in hospitality outlets, and then suddenly that was gone. People were at home, and they lost all of that human contact. So I think people felt very untethered from the sector they love. So what we tried to do, as well as getting financial grants out, was just to give people that reassurance that actually there are people out there who are able to help hospitality workers, So we made a big noise on social media about the fact that we were doing our very best. And we did a fundraising challenge, a virtual challenge in, I think, June of 2020. And it made money for us. And we asked people to run, walk, cycle, jog, swim, and then donate their miles to a virtual challenge that we set up online, but also raise sponsorship money. And people were pleased to get involved. I think partly because it gave them a sense of being part of something again.
Yeah.
Although they were doing it at one remove, they were remote, but they were involved in a hospitality initiative again. So throughout the pandemic, we were trying to give people that sense of togetherness, and I think that was quite important.
Yeah, I think you've probably, well, definitely reaped the benefit of that. I mean, I now see pockets of individuals here and there who are doing something to support you guys in terms of whether it's raising money or just giving up time, being ambassadors, whatever. It feels like that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly from the outside looking in, it feels like that's gone up a notch in the last couple of years.
It has hugely. You're absolutely right, and that's what we're trying to major on in future. We will continue to run the events and the outdoor challenges that we've always run. But what we're trying to do, frankly, is politely ask the sector to do some of the heavy lifting for us. We can't keep on as we grow and as we have ambitions to spend more money on grant giving and help more people in difficulty. We can't do it ourselves. So we do need the sector to support us. So yeah, we talk about third-party fundraising and trying to grow that. And by that, we mean getting operators to make us the charity of the year, or put £1 on the bill, or put 50p on a pizza or a cocktail, and find their own ways of making money for us. And that's definitely happening, which is fabulous, because that's the way we'll scale up.
Invisible chips springs to mind. I don't remember invisible chips being a thing 5 years ago, but they're there now.
Yeah, invisible chips has been great fun. We're very blessed to have some operators, as I said, putting £1 on the bill or 50p on a pizza. A lot of operators don't like to put money on a bill because it's effectively non-discretionary. If you go out for dinner and you've got a £120 bill that arrives at the table, but actually it's £121 because somebody's put a pound on for a charity you never heard of, it can at times create a bit of a sour taste, because there's the awkwardness involved in calling somebody over and saying, could you reissue a bill without that pound on it? You look mean-spirited in front of your friends. So, a lot of people have said to us over the years, we'd love to support, but we don't really want to do that. So we were looking for a mechanism back in the summer of 2020, which would allow operators to give the option for a discretionary donation to the sector. And I spoke to a pal of mine, my oldest friend, Dave Asquith, who used to work at Saatchi & Saatchi's as a copywriter, and I just sent them off with a brief. Could you come up with an idea that would fulfill this? And he and his partner Rob, his creative partner Rob Porteous, came back with this. They came back with 96 pages of fabulous ideas, many of which I'm sure will roll out in years to come. But the one that jumped out was invisible chips, and we just thought, that could really work. There's so many ways into it. It's about spending money on people to help people whose livelihoods is disappearing. It's 0% fat, 100% charity. There's lots of elements to it. It's fun. It creates a conversation at table. So we jumped on the idea. Heston Blumenthal, we're proud to have Heston as a patron of HHA. So we managed to persuade Heston to do a film of himself cooking his famous triple cooked invisible chips.
That was probably about an hour and a half long, was it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. He was such a star. He played an absolute blinder. We did the same with Tom Kerridge. We had a video of Fred Sirex tasting our invisible chips and saying they were much better than Gordon's. So we had some fun with it. But there was a really important message behind it, that people's livelihoods were disappearing, and this was a way that people could support them. And I think what we saw in lockdown, I think we all realised as punters, as well as people around the sector, that our lives are so much richer for having hospitality in them. And when suddenly that carpet was whipped from under us, and we couldn't have a pint at our local, and we couldn't have a swim at the local hotel pool, and we couldn't go to our favourite bistro, it suddenly made us realise that our lives were poorer for not being able to do so. So I think there's been an increased will amongst the general public to support hospitality, and Invisible Chips is a way of allowing them to do that.
Yeah, absolute genius idea. And then to get those people on board as well to do the the videos, I think, is takes the genius to a different level as well. I mean, that comes back to, utilizing the profiles of people who, one, really give a monkeys about hospitality as a whole, but two, have raised their own profile to this point. They're there on merit. All of the people you've mentioned in there have worked their backsides off to get to where they are to now. It's great to see that they still have this desire to want to give back.
Yeah, no, we're so lucky. Jason Atherton, Angela Hartnett's been fabulous, Tom, Heston. So many people stepped up to the mark to support us. And it's what we said a few minutes ago. People do give back. It's a sector where people don't just clock off at 5:30 and head home and not think about where they work and the sector within which they operate until the next morning. People throw themselves into hospitality. And we've seen that a million times with people supporting us in all sorts of different ways.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, what's coming up? What's on the cards for Hospitality Action going forward?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the simple answer is we want to keep on earning money so that we can disperse money. I've not talked about what we do, I guess, very much, and where we're really here not just to help people who, as we've seen a lot in the last 3 years, are struggling because of the pandemic and the economic downturn and the cost of living crisis and the war in Ukraine. We've been here for 185 years, helping people who have life-changing medical diagnoses. We're here to help people who have relationship breakdown and have domestic abuse, flashpoints that they need help getting away from. There's so many issues that can affect us all as human beings, and we're here to help people with those. So what's next is doing more of the same. But my ambition is to grow the charity to make sure that more people know that we're here, so that they know they can come to us when they hit that bump in the road. So that's the plan, and we'll do that with fundraising and promotion and marketing what we do, just shouting as loudly as we can about our work.
I'm very happy to play any part that I can in helping you do that. We have a small but perfectly formed following, so yeah, we're very happy to keep doing little bits here and there wherever we can, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. And I suppose that's half the battle, I guess, with running a charity in the space that you do, is educating people that your perception of why you might need Hospitality Action could be far removed from actually all of the different things that you actually look after. I think probably a lot of people's first perception would be financial support. That's probably the first thing that comes to people's minds. But everything you've highlighted there, it's basically, it sounds like if you're experiencing plight in some way, please just come and talk to us.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If you needed support with bereavement, if you needed support with relationship breakdown, if you needed support with a financial aspect, we've traditionally helped many people through dependency issues around gambling or alcohol or substance abuse. So, whatever your problem is, we're here to help, and we'll try our utmost. I think one thing that's changed in the last few years is I think HA feels a lot closer to people's lives than perhaps it did. I think now, and this is in large part due to the pandemic and the work we did, people know people who have been helped by Hospitality Action. And whereas traditionally, I think there might have been a misconception that we were a charity for elderly folk who had long retired from the sector. We weren't for people like you. We were for people half a world away who didn't do what we do. But now I think, people increasingly say to me, actually, you help somebody who I know in the sector in lockdown with a grant or with some counselling advice. And, it's that whole 6 degrees of separation thing. I think we're now closer to people than we used to be. And I think people can relate to us more than they used to. We've got a lovely guy called Mitchell Collier, who's an ambassador for us, he was kind enough to work with us on a video telling his story. He used to work at the Manoir Cateys a few years ago and had a torrid time over a few weeks where he was passed over for a promotion, relationship broke down, and then he discovered he had cancer. So he took a real blow to his his confidence. And we obviously couldn't help with the cancer, so he was at the John Radcliffe in Oxford for that. But we could help with some counselling to build his confidence back up again. And Mitch always says, I was a young man building a career in a luxury hotel, the Manoir Quatre Saisons. And he said, I thought I was the last person that would need hospitality actions support, but actually I was exactly the sort of person that needed your support. And I think that's the story we tell a lot, because we want people to realize that we're there for them. We're not for people not like them. We're here for anyone in the sector who hits a bump in the road.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly relatable story. I was lucky enough to have Mitch on the show actually, and he told very openly his plights that he went through, and I will love him forever for that. But equally, I think a lot of the time, and I've experienced this myself, you don't, like, when things are going well for you, you think that I'm never going to need anything like that, but you just never know what turn of events can take you into a place that you're unfamiliar with, and whilst you can do what you can to kind of mentally prepare yourself for that through the general day-to-day work of resilience and all of that comes with the sector that we're in, nothing can prepare you for some things that happen, and nobody knows what the point is where they no longer can handle it themselves, that they need to be able to reach out for help. And I think just by you guys being there, you're like a really wonderful human safety net for anyone that works in this industry.
Well, thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, we do talk about being a safety net. That's something that's the way we also articulate what we do.
I thought I'd just written your marketing plan there, but there we are.
Well, exactly. Yeah, no, and I must doff my cap again to the team, who are just fabulous and have been tireless over the last 3 years. It's been tough, and do you know what? It's tough for the case managers, who are the people who receive the calls from people needing support. That's a tough job, to hear bad news stories morning, noon, and night, and I have to deal with distressed people. And distressed people can sometimes become angry and frustrated if they're not getting what they need immediately. So it's been a very tough job. We had a call once a few months ago come into a case manager from somebody who said, I've just put an application form in for financial support, and if I don't get money in my account by the end of the day, I'm going to throw myself off the nearest multi-story car park.
Right.
That's a big weight to carry for somebody who works at a charity and turns up every morning to do good. So it's a tough job. It can be hard work for the team, and it can be grueling. But they've just played an absolute blind, and I couldn't be prouder of them.
No, hats off. I think it takes an incredibly special human being to be able to take the plight of others onto their own shoulders to help them get past it. Yeah, you must have a team of superstars.
Yeah, we do. And then we have lots of ambassadors who are also superstars. We have Charlie Hodgson, the chef in Norfolk, who speaks very frankly about his mental health challenges over the years and is a wonderful ambassador for us. There's Henal and Rena Chotai, who until recently ran the Red Cup Cafe in Harrow, who run a cafe on the station approach in a suburb of North London, but have raised £2,500 themselves, £2 at a time, through invisible chip sales. There's so many wonderful. Gosh, there's so many people who I'm not going to mention, but we're very blessed to have a fabulous team, but also a fabulous group of supporters and a growing band of ambassadors who love what we do and want to tell more people in their region what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a chat coming up with a couple of your, I'm going to say, quite frankly, crazy souls that are going to take on the Atlantic Rowing Challenge.
Yeah, Chris and Robbie at the Genuine Dining Company, they're unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, again, hats off. They're braver men than I am. That I think it's going to take them, if they're lucky, 32 days, but it could be up to 50 odd to cross the Atlantic in a rowing boat for two. They're hoping to raise 250k for us, which is off the scale. I mean, that's a huge amount of money for us. And they're working hard. I know they started last year, beginning the training. I think they go in early December. So, what a gift to give us, to give so much of their time and their energy and put themselves so far outside their comfort zone to raise money for people like them and their employees.
Totally. And I think as well, from my own, just from a really selfish perspective, I think that anyone who wants to take on a challenge like that, I'm kind of almost a little bit obsessed by the mentality of what that takes. So I think I'm looking forward to the conversation with them. I think that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So we'll do a before. I'm not sure we'll do a during, but we'll do an after as well,
Yeah,
and see how
yeah.
they go. But I think that's the joy of, when you're a charity such as you guys, you've obviously touched the lives of a lot of people, and whatever form that looks like, is that then you get people who step up and want to play their part in making sure you guys can, more than just exist, but really really thrive and make a massive difference.
Yeah, there are so many joys. I feel so blessed to have this job. I feel like the luckiest guy alive. There's the joy of seeing people give of themselves when they don't need to, like Chris and Robbie deciding to row the Atlantic. What a thing! What a gift to give.
Yeah,
Um, but also, the other joy we see is the thank you notes, and I always say that's what kept us going through the last 3 years. So our colleague Ife, who works on the services team, once in a while will send out the latest batch of thank you notes we've had from beneficiaries, people who've received support from us, and that's been a joy which has really kept us going through difficult busy periods. And it was tough early on in the first lockdown. You and I are lucky that £250 is a lovely amount of money to have in your pocket or in the bank, but it shouldn't be a transformative amount, a life changing amount. But we were giving £250 grants to people, and they were reaching out saying, God, we'd have calls from people saying, I received the ping on my phone from the bank to say your money had landed, and I fell to my knees and broke down in tears in the supermarket because I knew that meant
yeah,
I could feed my kids for another few weeks while I tried to make sense of the world. And those sorts of thank you notes were an utter joy, and we just had thousands of notes like that from people saying thank you, and it was really humbling.
yeah. That's just brilliant. I salute the work you do, and yeah, as I say, I'm very very happy to play my part in any way, which way that might look. I
Thank
got
you.
involved in the Walk for Wellbeing this year, the first time I've ever done that, which was a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun, a little bit of a challenge, but a very fun challenge.
Yeah, we've got our virtual challenge in the early summer, and then we do the Walk for Wellness with the fabulous Craig Prentice and Sean Wheeler. That was a gift of theirs to us. So we'll be doing that again in the autumn. And yeah, these challenges are all about raising money, of course, but it's also about looking after your physical health and your mental health. Because guess what?
Yeah,
If you're working 17 hours a day and you're never escaping the kitchen, or you're at your desk for far too long, it's not good for your health. So these challenges are a chance to break the cycle and get out and about and take a walk and clear your head a little bit. And also for teams, for operators, it's a chance to do a bit of team building. What better than to say, right, let's all meet in the park at 7 in the morning and go for a half an hour walk before we go into the office or into the kitchen. And so that's what we try and promote. But yeah, well, thanks for getting involved, and hopefully you'll be involved again this year.
without question. Yeah, I had too much fun to not get involved again. So no, I'll definitely be up for that. The last thing I really wanted to talk to you about, because this was a new experience for me in the last 12 months, was Back to the Floor. It feels like it's a monumental undertaking to put something like that together. Definitely worth it from where I can see in terms of the money that you raise, etc., etc. But I think more than that is just, I can't remember going to a hospitality event and just having the biggest grin on my face from the start to finish. I mean, looking around the room as to who was serving tables was just like a who's who of the industry, and it was just a joy to watch.
Yeah, it's a brilliant event. So the idea came from Danny Pecorelli and Philip Newman Hall, who were at a Caterer event years ago, Hotel of the Year lunch, and they were on the same table and they got chatting about what they could do for hospitality action. I was at the Caterer then, not at HA, but they had this idea: why don't we get eminent hoteliers to go back to the floor and wait at table? And the idea is that you get legends like Harry Murray to serve at table, and you challenge them by creating a bit of a silver service challenge for them. So they might have to serve petit pois silver service, or they might have to
Yeah,
use a spuma gun. So we try and make it as tricky as possible. Get some sommeliers involved as well, and give them magnums to try and maneuver around the room. But the idea was just to get these amazing hoteliers to go back to what they might have done 20, 25, 30, 40 years ago. And it's built and built from this brilliant idea that Danny and Philip had. The first event was probably 10 years ago at Penny Hill Park, and we probably had 150 people there. and now we're getting 450, 500 people coming to events. We do them every 2 years. The one you came to last year was kindly hosted by Sally Beck at the Royal Lancaster. We'll be at a Park Plaza on the South Bank, courtesy of Daniel Podreski next year, and it's just great fun. There's food flying, and there's drinks flowing and drinks spilling, and nobody comes away without some red wine down their front. But it's all good fun, and it was a particularly fabulous event last year. Peter Crome, who is chairman up at the Carnegie Club at Skibo Castle in the Highlands, brought an amazing band down with him. That was his gift for the evening, and they just brought the house down, didn't they?
Oh, they were brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I honestly, I walked away from that thinking, God, how have I not been to this before? I mean, it was just a proper good, riotous knees up for, and just watching legends of the industry struggling to, as you say, put silver served peas on a plate. That's just genius.
Well, last year, one of the abiding images was Jeremy Goring frisbeeing the main course across the table. And so, there's some fun and games. But we managed to raise, I think, £258,000, which
Brilliant.
is by a long way the biggest single fundraiser in the history of the charity. So it shows that people having fun turns into funds raised. And I've always been clear that the last thing I want is for people to feel they have to go to our events. I want people to enjoy our events, and we've all been to charity events at times where it's not the best night out in the world. The food ain't the best, and the entertainment ain't the best, and you sort of feel like you're there out of duty rather than for pleasure. So back to the floor is a great it's a great example of an event that is at once great fun but also profitable for the charity.
Superb. Great stuff. Well, I am going to let you go, but there's one question for you just before I do that, and that's a question I ask everyone of the show. What would be your top 3 reasons why somebody should come and join hospitality as a career?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've never worked in hospitality apart from working in a bar a few times.
You kind of do. I think it's safe to say that you operate on the fringes, but it's still absolutely part of the
definitely
on
the coattails of the sector. I've worked in pubs and bars over the years when I was much younger. But I think if I had my time again, I would if I knew when I was 16, 17 what I know now, I would have probably not gone to university and gone straight into hoteling. I'm absolutely beguiled by the hotel sector. I think it's so exciting, and hospitality generally is exciting. It's a chance to travel the world if that's what you want to do. You meet amazing people. You get that immediate thrill of feedback from people who've had a great meal or a great stay. Normally in most industry sectors, the only people you hear from are the people who are complaining about the bad service or the bad product they've had from you. But actually, hospitality, almost uniquely, is the opposite. Yes, you'll hear the complaints, but also you hear people saying, "Thank you, that was a beautiful cocktail, that was a wonderful dinner, that was a fabulous stay, a wonderful spa treatment." So, there's so much to love about hospitality. And I think the most important thing, and people like David Michels and Harry Murray are examples of this. Nick Jones, I could name a million people. You start out and you can build a career which is as big and successful as you'd like it to be. If you work hard and apply yourself, you can have a wonderful time, but also build a great career. And I think that's not understood by too many careers influencers. And I think that's what we need to get across, that it's the sky's the limit if you start a career in hospitality.
Hear, hear. Well, that is a wonderful way to round things off. Thank you so much for your time, Mark. I am so glad we got there in the end. And I wish you guys all the very best for the next phase of into 2023 and well beyond.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. Really enjoyed it.
No worries. Take care. And there we have it. Yet another wonderful journey demonstrated by Mark. Please don't forget to get behind hospitality action wherever you can. You never know when you may need them. Tune back in on Friday as I've got a cheeky bonus for you, carrying on the hospitality action theme. But until then, thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to give us a share.